Hi friends, welcome to my first crochet journal. If you've been on my channel before, you've probably noticed that I post mostly sewing and knitting videos, but I recently started crocheting and I just wanted to share my progress that I've made so far. So this is really just for people who are like me and are just starting crochet and are feeling overwhelmed by all the videos made by people who are like obvious experts in crochet. I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to crochet, so I'm not doing this as a how-to or a tutorial or anything. It's really just my thoughts on how things are going so far. So if you're a beginner like me, hopefully you can find something fun or interesting in here, and this is just some stuff that I've learned so far. So I started crocheting for literally the sole purpose of making a loaf cat. It's by Annie Carraway, and I think everyone pretty much agrees it's like the go-to cat loaf pattern. My dream is to make a little crochet version of all of my cats, so this is the one I started with. It's supposed to be my cat Buffy, who is an orange Torby, which is like a tortoiseshell tabby. And so this yarn was like the perfect color, but this is the first one I started making, and you can see it's kind of wonky, and there's a couple things I did wrong. So I'm not sure if I'm going to finish this one or just kind of start over, but I learned a lot from just making this first one. So the first thing I learned when making this is that the hook I was using was way too small, and it does make a difference. I'm a knitter, so I should know that, but I didn't have a large enough crochet hook with a nice handle. And so I was just like, this one's large enough, maybe it'll work, but it didn't. And I'm thinking this is like kind of wobbly and weird because my hook was too small or I was crocheting too tight. It's really dense. So the reason I was using a hook that was too small is because I was having like so much hand pain when I was using these without the like silicone on them. And then I realized, or saw on YouTube I guess, someone else had wrapped their crochet hook in this like medical tape stuff. And so I did have the right size in a regular crochet hook, and I wrapped it in this tape and it worked super well. And that's just this stretchy tape stuff, and you can just wrap it around and instantly make any like regular crochet hook into a comfy one for a lot less than buying a whole set of these things. Another thing I learned while making this is that I have a really hard time counting my stitches between my increases, and as a result of that I ended up with like 6 or 7 extra stitches around here. And then I kind of had to like adjust where I put the ears, and it's been kind of a mess. So this is my second one that I'm working on, and it's going a lot better. The tension, or whatever you want to call it, seems a lot better, and a lot of that is because I'm using the right size of hook. But I also learned a better way, in my head at least, to count my stitches because I kept accidentally adding extras in the first one. So what I do is I count single, single, double, single, single, double if there's like a single crochet increase. And I know double crochet is actually a thing, but in my head, like single, double, like I can actually keep track of that for counting purposes. So when I do single, single, I do a single crochet. And then in my head, when I say double to myself, when I'm like counting to myself, then I'll do a increase stitch, which is just crocheting 2 stitches into the same I don't know what these are called, V stitch. Again, I do know double crochet is actually a thing, but in my mind that just makes sense for counting, and so far so good. Another thing that I realized so far is that starting with a tweed yarn or like a multicolor yarn of any kind was like probably way too ambitious for me because I could not see the stitches to save my life, and I know that's just like this yarn, which by the way, I'm seriously impressed by anyone who uses this all the time because it's really hard to see your stitches, but especially on tweed like this one. So for my second attempt, I actually switched to white yarn, and it's been going a lot better because I can actually kind of see my stitches. And so if you're making something with this burlap blanket for the first time, I would definitely say to start with white or some other really light color so you can like actually see what you're doing. And then as a knitter, I know this already, but like I didn't realize it would make such a big difference with this yarn. But doing a center pull, which is like digging inside the yarn ball and pulling out the center and pulling like that, instead of pulling it from the outside of the ball like I'm doing on this one. Helps everything stay really nice and neat. And also it's really good for my tension when I am pulling the yarn out from the center, because I'm not like fighting with the whole ball rolling around, and also it keeps everything neater. But I'm thinking the tension issue is really the main benefit of pulling from the center. And then something else I learned is basically how to use stitch markers in crochet. And I'm sure there's lots of different ways, but I was not able to figure out like how to actually keep track of like my beginning stitch. So what I do is make my crochet stitch, and then I've been just like putting the stitch marker inside that and then continuing on, and when I get back to this, then I know that this is my first stitch of the round. When I started, I was just kind of like leaving the stitch marker in here and not moving it, but moving it up and actually putting it in my first stitch, like inside the stitch itself, really helped. And that's probably the way you're supposed to do it, but I didn't watch any videos on this, and there's probably some like really experienced person who has better tips for using stitch markers, but that's just what's working for me so far. And it's actually helping a lot with me like being able to tell where my stitches are supposed to be and start and end and all that stuff. So probably the most useful thing I learned, and I read this from someone's notes on Ravelry, is that this pattern looks better when you use the yarn unders instead of yarn overs. And because I'm super new to crochet, I didn't even know that there was a difference, or that you could even make a crochet hook by yarn under, but I'm officially team yarn under now, I guess, because I really like how it looks, and I think it's true that it actually does hurt your wrist less.
So a yarn under is when the yarn comes underneath the hook, wrapping from left to right around the hook. And a yarn over is when it comes over top of the hook, wrapping from right to left.
Most people who do amigurumi do yarn unders versus yarn overs just because it creates like a really nice fabric. So that's something that I learned. If you're new to crochet like I am, I hope you don't get discouraged, because creating those magic loops or magic rings or whatever you call them is really hard for me, and like I want to give up every time I cast one on or hook one on. I don't know what you're supposed to say in crochet, but I almost gave up like every time. I attempted this several times, making it look nice before I actually like continued on. And so if you're new like me, don't give up. We can be in this together. Here's an update to my kitty progress. I just finished making his cute little bobble feet, and now I'm gonna attach eyes. So I just wanted to do a before and after because I think it's gonna be super cute. Again, I have no idea what happened with my first kitty, so I think I'm gonna rip this out because this one turned out so much better, and I want this one to look like that too. Here is how my kitty turned out, and it is possibly the cutest thing I've ever made, and I'm immediately gonna go make a bunch more, except I have to give myself a break because I think this is gonna give me carpal tunnel. I hurt my wrist making this. It's not perfect, but to me, I'm super happy with how this turned out. I meant to make some updates on how I did the rest of it, but once I got past the front feet, everything just went super fast. I didn't change anything about the pattern, except my cat ended up being really wide. And I don't know if that's just like my crochet tension or what, but when I got to the point where the pattern told me to make the back feet, he was a little bit too short. So I kept going a little bit to make him a bit longer, and I'm glad I did. Also, because I crocheted kind of on the larger side, I think, I had to take a few stitches out of the tail circumference because it was like really big. So I think that worked out really well too. I plan on making little pet portraits of my kitties. I bought yarn yesterday to do that, so I have all the colors I need, and I'm super excited. And so I'm gonna get started on that as soon as my wrist stops hurting. So stay tuned for my next kitty journal. Bye!